Want to make your own campaign, but the workload seems so large and daunting that it scares you? Think that just running one of the Wizards of the Coast modules just be so much more easier? Well, you're wrong. And you're right. The answer is complex, so let's get into it. Welcome back, storytellers. My name is Khalil Robeson, an experienced dungeon master here to help you pursue your fantasy. And we're taking a small break from the writing a campaign video series, as I need to actually write the campaign for you guys that we've been making together. If you weren't able to join us for that project and writing this entire campaign, but want to join us for future projects, which I have a lot of those, please just join us in the Discord down below and you can join our amazing storytelling community. But enough about that. Let's talk about why you should not be running a module. I hate when people make videos that are very skewed on either side of an argument. So we're gonna make this fair. We're gonna put the module arguments over here, and then we're gonna put the homebrew campaign arguments over here, and then we're gonna list their pros and cons all down there. So let's get into it. So let's start off with the first con on the module side. The first con is the fact that modules are literally a soup of information that you have to spend a lot of time before you even sit down at the table with your players, deciphering and figuring out on how it all works. You probably have to spend around a week doing all this. You have to read the module. After you've read the module, you then have to understand how each different encounter, NPC, and place works in the grand story of the module. And it's just a lot of work they have to do before you even step into the table. Whereas when you run your own homebrew campaign, you don't have to do all of that. You can honestly just prep 2 weeks worth of encounters and then not have to do anything else. And then as your party is engaging with all that, most likely it'll take a lot longer to do it. Most likely it'll take like 3-4 weeks with all the stuff that you've planned. And then you just do it once again. There's not a lot of forbearing work that you have to do. You can make it more reactive in your creation of the story. That way you don't have to spend a whole week or even more before you even run the game prepping and figuring out on how you're going to be running the game. The second con of a module is it doesn't give your players enough XP. Now, if you've actually ran any modules, and when I ran my Curse of Strahd game, this is something I noticed very quickly, that the module itself doesn't provide enough XP encounters in order to give your party the desired XP that they need in order to reach the desired level in order to fight Strahd at the end. So you have to spend a lot of time after you've already done all the forework in order to figure out how to get your party through this entire story and navigating them. But you have to spend even more work in creating side quests in order to get them to the desired level. That way they can actually have a shot at taking this encounter. And this is a pro for homebrew campaigns because you're making all of the encounters. So if you see that, or if you want your party to be a certain level, you just throw all that XP their way, and it's just intrinsic in the way that you're making your campaign. You automatically will put enough XP there just so they can get to where you want them to go. You won't have to do any extra work. You don't really have to do extra work in order to ensure that there is enough XP for them to get to that desired level. The last con for modules is you hate the story. Now, you have to spend around 30-ish or more dollars in order to buy a module. You just spent $30. At the most part, most of us are going to want to run that module or run most of the material in that module because we just spent all that money on it. And here's the issue. If you read the module from cover to cover, you're like, yo, this thing sucks, and it's a little too late for you to go return it, you just spent that $30 and you're kind of out of luck. Or even worse, you're running the game with your players and they're like, yo, DM, this is a no-go. This sucks. This is terrible. We don't like this anymore. You just spent $30 on this and now that's just money down the drain. And most times you'll feel more beholden to hold your party on the railroads in order to get them to play the module because you just spent $30 on this module, and you know, even though the story kind of sucks, you want them to use it because you just spent the money on it. Whereas if you homebrew your own game, you control the story. For the most part, you should like the story because you're making it. And then secondarily, if your party doesn't like the story, then you could just change it on the whim because you haven't spent any money on it and you don't need to feel beholden that you like it. The first con on the homebrew side is you like the story, but your players don't. If your players don't like your story, but you love it, sometimes you feel like, you know what, just because they don't like the story, I like it. So maybe they should continue going down this story because I've spent so much work in order to create it that they should enjoy it and relish in it. In which, if that's the case, you probably should not think like that at all. You're there to, the Dungeon Master's job is to ensure that the players are having fun, and them having fun is your fun. If that's not the case, just be a player. Don't worry about being a Dungeon Master. It's okay. Not everyone is meant to be a dungeon master. But that is one of the biggest cons of making your own homebrew games, that you put so much work into making it and your players don't like it and you're not willing to give up all of that work. Whereas if you buy a pre-made module, if your players don't like it, you can always just blame it on the module and say, yeah, the module just sucks, it's not my fault, we can just try again. The first pro to a module is the fact that they spend, the people who build this are, one, masters at their craft and have been doing this for years, and two, have been doing this can spend months on creating their modules, versus you do not have nearly as much time in order to create modules. And because of that, your stories possibly could not be as well flushed out or as well thought of as the people who are making these modules. And I say that with a really big possibly. And because of that, it'd be a lot nicer just to buy the module and have all these very well thought of stories and very well conveniently placed plot points and NPCs that you can then just put in your stories as well. Another pro for the modules is the fact that they make awesome backbones for an improv campaign. If you strip a lot of the connecting bits of the story for the modules, you can really get to the very core plot points that the players have to hit in order to really progress the story in the campaign. And by doing that, you can then just improv your way in between those points. And it really gives you a very structured and very sort of easier way to create an improv campaign, because you already have the backbone already created. All you have to worry about is a session by session improv to get them from point A to point B. Another pro for modules is that you can really make them modular. Got it? Sorry. Anyways, you can really make them modular, and you can take out specific elements inside the overall module itself and then implement it in your homebrew games, or make homebrew games simply from all those modular bits and put them all together to make a huge amalgamous campaign, really. And all of them are very well fleshed out, so you can just rip a town here, rip an NPC there, rip a king there, and just put it in your campaigns. And it really gives them a lot of recyclability, because even if you were to play the module from cover to cover, you can still play that exact same module with the same players and just rip out certain things and just place them there, and the players will then have to experience all these different things on a different story arc. So modules are really good for their modulability. Closing statements. Should you run a module? Maybe. I think a module is a very cool tool that you can use as a DM inside of your toolbox. And I think for newer DMs just getting into the scene, I personally would say don't use a module, because I think just making a homebrew game makes it a lot easier for you as a DM to get to know the game system. And then secondarily, it makes it easier for you as a DM to know everything that's going on and can pace it to how comfortable you are with running certain things. That's just my personal suggestion. And I think that if you are going to use a module as a new DM or even as an experienced DM, I think really the coolest part of using a module is the modulability of that module and being able to take certain elements out of it and making a campaign out of that itself. And I personally will probably always run a homebrew game, because I think that the best experience that you can ever have as a DM is conceptualizing a story in your head, having an idea of what you want the endpoint to be, putting it in front of your players and just watching them literally take it, mutate it, morph it, and turn it into this blob of a mess that you did not foresee happening whatsoever. And then they have to, you just rolling with it and reacting to it. I think that is the best experience you can have as a dungeon master. And if you really like these videos and like just the way that I talk in my thought process, feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can get notified when I make new videos. But also on top of that, please feel free to like this video, as it kind of helps me out and I like to see how many people like it. And comment on whether or not you think modules suck or they don't. But other than all that, I hope you have a fantastic day. And in a world without fantasy, sometimes need a little Dungeons and Dragons.